Alright, this should be up and running now. Let's get at it. Another day, another hour of practicing gesture drawings until all of it sticks in my head. And at the same time, rambling about concepts and thoughts that have been on my mind. Today, I think that I want to talk about energy. Specifically, how people don't actually take it into account. You hear it a lot these days, right? That people are tired and that they basically don't want to do anything. And then the reason for that is because they aren't managing their energy properly. And I'm not talking about energy in the spiritual, voodoo, and or like magical sense. I'm talking about energy in just the capacity to perform actions. It's not even willpower, it's just the ability to choose. You could call it willpower, but it's slightly different. Because there's a few different types of energy that you have. Clearly, there's the physical energy level, where your body is either exhausted or not, depending on how much activity you have done. Then there's also the mental energy, where it's your capacity to think and then like process complex cognitive activities. It's like mental RAM. There is also emotional energy. That's your capacity to relate to other people and kind of like see through their lives. The problem is that most people, I feel, either conflate all of these energies or they treat it as one big bar. They think that by refueling one aspect, they'll refuel all the rest. But that's definitely not true, because they're all correlated too. It's like, it's true that if you run out of one, you'll run out of the others, but refilling one does not refill the others too. It's a weird kind of balance that you have to achieve. And when I say balance here, I'm not talking about equal balance, because that's definitely not the case. You have different thresholds for each type of energy, depending on your disposition and the life you live. But this is an important point, so let's take a step back and talk about balance. You hear that a lot these days, right? People say you need balance in your life. That if you don't balance things properly, you're not going to live a proper life, or you're going to be miserable or wreck stuff. But you know, when those type of people say they want you to be balanced, they are operating from the premise that to be balanced means that everything must be equal. But that's a fundamentally flawed premise. You can balance a scale with different things. Like for example, if you have oranges and you have cherries, it takes a lot more cherries on one side of the scale to balance it than it does oranges. That's the thing that people keep forgetting or people keep missing. Balance does not mean equal. balance means homeostasis or equilibrium. It's not equality, it's equilibrium. It's at a point where nothing is collapsing. But it doesn't mean you have to spend the equivalent energy or even time on things to make them at equilibrium. You don't need to spend all the time with your family. You just need to spend enough to where they are appreciated, for example. You don't need to spend all your time studying if you know the amount of studying you need to do to achieve your results, so on and so forth. It's all actually boiling down to intentions and whether or not you have what I like to call singularity of purpose when you're doing your activity. You see, the reason why energy is wasted doesn't come from using it on something. Like, energy isn't wasted if it's being spent. Energy is wasted if it's not being spent. You following? So the only time that energy is actually wasted is when it's not being spent, and the only time that energy isn't being spent is if you are changing tasks. Like, think about it. If you are focusing completely on a single objective and your full focus is on that objective, then you're going to be spending your energy. You're not going to be wasting your energy, because the whole purpose was for you to perform that activity. Now, the problem comes when you keep switching out of that activity. If you have to go back and forth all the time, you are actually going to be wasting energy due to the fact that you have to convert that energy. Although energy can't be created or destroyed, in physics, most of the time when there's an energy transmutation from a different form, the excess energy is lost as heat. It gets radiated into the environment instead of into the reaction that it originated from. Although I wouldn't say that the energy is wasted as heat when you are doing something and changing tasks. It is radiated into the environment. It basically leaves you, and that's probably why people keep feeling drained. Instead of focusing on one singular task, people keep switching and allowing their attention as well as energy reserves to start and stop. It's similar to having a car and then starting and stopping the engine over and over and over again. Clearly, that's going to strain it, right? A similar thing happens to you when you are just switching back and forth and not actually focusing on a singular activity. When you simply continue to go back and forth from something instead of following it through and like narrowing your focus to that particular activity, what ends up happening is that you end up just plain out losing most of the energy that you had intended. Your fuel gets depleted by the byproduct of switching. It's like the difference between a laser beam and a prism that emits a rainbow from a beam of light. The prism makes the light look very pretty, but that light isn't actually useful for any of its energy. Like, it doesn't emit heat, it doesn't do any of that, because it's now diffuse. You can see each individual color, and then you can understand that what is invisible is actually built up of many different parts. But in application, that doesn't help. You have to just think about the purpose behind every activity that you're doing and the energy cost that will be required to pay, or the energy cost it will take for performing that activity. If it's worth the cost, then continue doing it for sure. But if it's not worth the cost, then reconsider. People probably assume that they have an inexhaustible source of energy to work with. If not, then they probably think that it's possible to refill their energy at any time. They just need to wait a little bit. But that's also not true. Although you can replenish your energy throughout the day by allowing yourself to rest. The problem is that the act of resting itself requires energy to shift into resting mode and to shift back out of resting mode. Momentum is very much an important part when it comes to energy conservation, like even just physics-wise. But in terms of actually productivity-wise, the same overarching principle applies. It is much easier to slow something down and speed it back up than to start something moving that has completely stopped. That's why you shouldn't ever get to the point where you need to stop to refuel. You should not ever hit E in life unless you are intending to increase the absolute capacity of your fuel tank. Like if you're working on deliberately increasing your limits. But that has to be very well structured when you are acting to increase your limits like that. Because you see, if you go empty on any one energy source, you'll end up inevitably tapping from the other energy sources. That's why if you're physically drained, you will likely feel mentally drained. Or if you're mentally drained, you will likely feel physically drained and emotionally drained, so on and so forth. Of course, this isn't an absolute rule. And it also isn't completely true because people rarely do go to absolute empty energy. When I'm talking about hitting E in energy, I mean that you hit the point where you physically cannot do something. Where like even the act of thinking is unthinkable. People rarely reach that point. It's a very valuable experience to have, but hitting that point is fundamentally hitting rock bottom. You learn a lot about your life, but it doesn't create a very pleasant experience and it does reset a lot of what you need to do. So going back to energy expenditures, it's important to just figure out the equilibrium point of all your energies, as well as the type of person you are. Odds are there is a particular energy that you lean on the most throughout your day when you're performing your daily activities. Are you expending a lot of physical energy? Like, are you moving your body a lot and then exerting physical force? If so, you need to keep that in mind and then do activities that will refuel that energy source as needed before it starts tapping into your other energy reserves. And for that, for physical refueling, it's just eating well, making sure you sleep well, and listening to when your body is telling you that pain is unfolding. People say that you can push through pain, and it's true, because pain is just a warning sign that damage is approaching, or damage is already done, depending on the severity of the pain. But you have to be self-aware enough to understand if the pain you're feeling is a warning or an indicator. That comes with a lot of self-knowledge and self-understanding. But anyways, if you use a lot of physical energy through the day because your job is physically taxing, that's what you need to do to make sure you're at your tip-top potential. But if your job is very mentally draining, if it requires a lot of mental energy, I'm thinking stuff that is computationally heavy, like maybe being an attorney, a doctor, a scientist, anything that involves just a lot of brain work, if that makes sense. It's important to actually disengage your mind every now and then when you're starting to get too much. And the way to do that, people would say meditate or being mindful, but really you just need to not think. And not thinking means not doom scrolling. Doom scrolling is not thinking. Let me rephrase that. Doom scrolling is actually very cognitively heavy. Scrolling through social media is also very cognitively heavy, because even though you are not actively processing information, you're still subjecting your mind to a lot of information. I am talking about going to a place that does not have a lot of mental stimulus. That can mean staring at a wall for a bit, taking a walk, drawing, or just anything like that where you don't have to follow heavy logic. You focus more on the physical sensations. Working out would probably be a good way to refuel too, at least for your mental reserves. Now, that aside, there's also the emotional reserves, your emotional energy, or I suppose you could call it spiritual energy, but it's not quite that either. The people who usually need to refuel this are people in jobs that are, I guess they would call it soul crushing, because it kind of is. This is any sort of activity where your actions actually do not create much value. It's where it's very trivial, if that makes sense. Or they're tasks that just plain out require a lot of emotion to process. I'm thinking like emergency services or trauma centers, things where you are very emotionally charged a lot. In order to handle this, it's similar to refueling mental energy, where you need to turn your mind off, but you also need to make sure that you have regulated your emotional state. You have to actually be verbal with how you describe your emotions, and you have to process them out loud. Because the thing that people probably don't realize, or that they forget with emotions, is that emotions are non-verbal, and then you can get amplified if you just allow them to stay as pure feelings and sensations. By actually speaking about them and then putting words to what you are feeling, you slowly ground yourself, and then you anchor the emotions in something that is defined. And by defining it like that, you can control the total extent that they have an impact on your life. It's only by controlling it like that where you can make sure you don't get completely drained and then feel, well, empty inside. I think it's the best way to describe it. That's the general rundown on how I feel about energy levels. I think I covered most of what I wanted to say regarding them. The only other part is that different activities deplete different types of energy for different people. You have to understand the toll that it takes for you, because that toll might be different for other people. For example, the only toll that I feel from streaming like this is actually a physical toll. Like, my voice gets a bit strained, and then my hand gets a bit strained from drawing so much. But I don't get a mental or emotional toll from doing this, because to me it's as simple as breathing. I can imagine that other people definitely do get a mental toll from going live though, probably because of the, I wouldn't say attachment, but the particular not framing, but like the way it sits in their identity, if that makes sense. It makes it more exhausting in a different way for them than it is for me. What else? We can also talk about like going to the gym. For some people, that is definitely very mentally draining, because they have to bring themselves to embrace the potential pain and discomfort that will unfold at the gym. And that takes its toll on their state of mind. But for other people, they don't feel that toll because they enjoy the pain due to it reflecting the progress. Stuff like that. And I suppose studying is another example. There are people who hate studying because it feels like it's pointless, or it takes too long, or they have to understand something that doesn't really make sense to them, and that mentally taxing act is unpleasant. But there are people who enjoy that challenge, or just the act of obtaining new information in general, and so it isn't very taxing to them at all. It all boils down to identity at the end of the day, which influences how much energy something will take. If it is basically natural to you, then likely you won't consume a lot of energy, if at all, when performing it. Because energy is expended to generate force, and force is required when something is not already on the path that you're walking on. Or if it's not like... no, that analogy kind of falls apart. Basically, you need to use force when you're either at rest or need to change direction. And things are difficult for you when you need to change direction, which is why energy is expended during that change. I think that's roughly the point I was trying to get across. Not sure. All I know is that right now I am physically feeling pretty drained. Mostly because I've been getting a bit sick recently due to constantly changing weather. Hopefully, just slowing down will allow my body to recover enough to make that up and restore that energy level. Oh, speaking of restoring energy levels, the actual best thing to do to increase your absolute capacity for energy is just sleeping, like properly sleeping. People ironically sleep on sleep, but sleep actually allows you to improve all of your energy levels. It decreases, first of all, the difficulty of something to be processed because your mind is in tip-top shape if it has sufficient sleep, and then is very efficient since it's, well, wide awake. Not only that, but if you have proper sleep, then physically you'll be feeling good too, because you will have had enough restorative time where your body uses sleep to actually heal any damage that you have accrued throughout the day. And people don't realize it, but you do accrue a lot of damage just by existing. Walking around, sitting down for a while, holding your phone, things like that. You don't feel it, but it's definitely inflicting some strain on your body, and that strain will accumulate. Sleep resets this strain so long as you sleep properly. Another thing that sleep does for you, if you have proper sleep, is that it processes all of the information you have experienced throughout the day. If there's anything that you had been trying to learn or trying to do, the moment that you sleep, you are able to let your mind use its subconscious processes, or like I prefer to call them, background processes, to sort out the information that you have accumulated through the day. Rest, at least in this definition of sleep, is important because it allows your body to basically just sort out and level up. If you forego sleep, you're always operating on basically what you have already been having. It's like refusing to level up in a Dungeons and Dragons campaign. Sleep actually does allow you to consolidate everything you've earned throughout the day. And by foregoing sleep, you kind of forego the opportunity to consolidate your wins. So remember to sleep. It doesn't matter the amount, as long as the amount is sufficient for you to feel rested. But don't sleep in all day too. Sleep inertia is a thing. As with the balance before that I mentioned, you have to find that minimum threshold where everything is working out properly and you aren't overdoing any part of it. It's the overdoing that definitely messes people up, not the total amount, but more the repeated and extended amount. The frequency or lack thereof affects more than the net sum. I think that was all that I had to talk about energy-wise regarding that. Focus is something that's similar to energy too, that people probably forget about. So the key part about focus is that it's singularity of purpose. You have completely put your attention, thoughts, and energy to a singular activity. By doing this singular activity and by spending time upon that singular activity, you achieve a distance. That distance, of course, is within the activity that you had wanted to perform. Because focus is simply spending time upon a single thing. Now, you might think that I'm not very focused, considering that I am both talking and then trying to do these gesture drawings. But that's actually incorrect. I am very much focused because what I am doing is that I am training my ability to let my mind react holistically to a combination of what appears to be disparate parts. Or to put it in more simple words, I'm improving my ability to synthesize things into a single task. I'm not multitasking, even though it might appear to be so. Instead, what I am doing is that I'm trying to make my mind begin to process this as a singular activity. It's kind of like how a pianist can play the left hand and the right hand to a song at the same time. I'm not trying to do these individually, even though they definitely would improve individually due to the fact that I am performing the activity. But that's not the primary purpose of this. The primary purpose that I am doing and the focus of the activity I am doing is to allow natural pattern recognition and natural concept connection. You see, there's definitely similarities between these two activities. And by these activities, I mean doing these gesture drawings as well as talking to you. The problem is that I wouldn't be able to consciously pick up on them due to the fact that I would have to be doing one or the other, and then it would take a period of analysis in order for me to pick up on what is similar or dissimilar between the two activities. Basically, I would need to do a third thing in order to figure out how these two things connect. But if I simply do them at the same time, and I force myself to pick up on the ways that they interact by not allowing my conscious mind to intervene, it allows me to rely on the subconscious mind, or in other words, the background processing, to pick up on the pieces that I normally wouldn't analyze. Basically, because I'm pushing myself beyond the threshold of the ability I have to consciously consider what's going on, I am increasing my brain's ability to process information and synthesize it on the fly. It's equivalent to training an LLM for a generative AI, except that my mind is the generative AI. So then I never need to actually worry about whether it's original or not, because it's all filtered through me. And I am unique due to the exact combination of experiences I have accumulated during my lifetime. Now, going back to the concept of focus, that was a bit of a side tangent, but basically, focus can really only occur when you have defined the objective or activity that you are performing. You can't focus on something that you don't know about. And I believe that's the problem that people face when they are losing focus. More often than not, it's not that you don't have focus, it's that you don't know what you're doing. You see, when you don't know what you're doing, you can't focus because your conscious mind has to pick up the slack. It has to start dissecting what it is that you don't know and then try to process it into an actionable activity for you to reutilize your focus. Now, that is going back to what we talked about regarding energy. Very energy intensive. You're absolutely shifting gears very often when you're doing that. And that shifting gears depletes the store of energy that you have throughout the day. In short, no good. So if you actually want to focus on things, the key to focus is to make sure that you have a clear objective that you can move towards. If you have a clear objective, then focus will be natural because you are constantly making steady progress. Like for me here, focus is fine and I don't have to worry about anything at all, or even shift gears in and out, because of the fact that the objective I have set is to simply be live for an hour. And during that hour, I do my best and make attempts at recreating the poses that I see, as well as many of the features as possible, while ignoring any failed attempts, because I am not concerned with a perfect replica, but simply picking up on the subconscious patterns that develop for me and the shorthands that I naturally trend towards when I'm drawing these poses. I get to have the benefit of not caring about the result because the process itself was the result I'm looking for. Everything else is a bonus. Now, going back to how that applies to most things, if you don't have a set objective, that's absolutely why you're failing to perform whatever task you're wanting to perform, as well as the action that you're avoiding. Often, procrastination comes about due to a complete inability to understand what it is that you need to do. It's like how if you say you need to study for an exam, it feels extremely overwhelming because you don't have an idea of what study means. It's still very vague for you. Or at least that's probably the case if studying is very overwhelming. There's a simple solution for that though, and that's to define what studying means. For me, studying would be just watching lectures or just reading the book. Just going over the subject material by re-experiencing it. I'm not bothering to memorize it. I'm not bothering to work through problem sets. I'm simply reviewing the core concepts. That's what studying means to me. Now, preparing for an exam is different. Preparing for an exam for me would be defined as taking practice exam questions and then answering them. Because an exam is a different objective from understanding the material. They like conflating it, but it's not actually the case. You can learn and know something very well, but do very poorly on the exam due to the fact that you are not familiar with the structure of the exam. That's actually why a lot of people who are not quote-unquote smart or very intelligent can do well on the exam simply due to the fact that they took practice exams and honed in on the specific things that needed to be answered, while that person who spent like 4 days and 20 plus hours studying will fail because they had too much information to sift through in their head. It all boils down there to understanding the objective that you're trying to achieve. And when you do understand that objective, focus comes naturally. So if something is hard for you to focus, odds are that you just need to find a single action step that you can repeat. The goal here for focus is to eliminate as much decision making as possible, because decision making is what brings you out of your focus. When you have to think, you are no longer focused because it's in the word focus. Focus means to, like I said earlier, have a singularity of purpose. And then when you're deciding, clearly you are not singular in purpose because you are selecting between purposes. So then what do we do, right? Well, first of all, like I said, you have to define your objective. If you are studying for an exam and you can't focus, decide what part of the exam you're studying for. Are you doing multiple choice? If so, then go find a bunch of multiple choice questions on that exam topic and just try them. It doesn't matter if you get them wrong or not. What matters is that you have attempted them. Do that enough, and then you will become familiar with both the subject material and the methodology you need to answer those questions. Like, you'll know the process and the content. Same with written exams. If you keep trying to write the exam and the papers that, or the essays that it asks you, then you'll actually get more efficient at writing the essays. And the key part about written exams is that they're timed and you have to write everything on the spot. A lot of times you actually get points more for having a complete thought than just spewing information. So you're actually benefiting more by understanding how to write in that time period rather than just cramming all the information. It all goes back to energy, objectives, and just like resource allocation. So going back to the question of how to establish focus whenever you need it, and basically what people would call flow. Well, when people say they're in the flow, they don't think, right? Then if you break down that concept, when do you not think? When something is either natural to you or the next step is so obvious that you naturally take it, right? Well then, have you heard of the saying that the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step? People think that it means you have to take small steps or you just have to begin. But they're kind of missing a key part of that saying. It's not just that you have to begin, but it's that the entire journey is made up of those small steps. So what you do is you just take one step, and when you finish with that one step, obviously you want to take another because it was so simple. And then by continuously taking steps, you'll end up having crossed 1,000 miles. That's probably the true purpose of the saying. Not that you just need to begin, but that in beginning you will see that the entirety is built up of many small things. So how does that become applicable to when you're performing actions? Well, it all just loops back to having rules for yourself. Because thinking, right, is what brings you out of focus. So if you don't need to think, then clearly you don't need to make decisions. And since you don't have to make decisions, you can be focused. I'm pretty sure this is how the top executives operate, or the people at the top of their fields. They have a very thorough if-then list of conditionals built up in their head that they can just simply move. They can just execute because they don't need to think anymore on it. Like, oh no, the printer broke. What do you do? Call IT. And then you just short-circuited there. Stuff like that. Or they offload their thinking to someone else entirely. That's how you have to treat your own life if you want to stay in a state of focus. You need to have rules, or I think if you want proper psychology terms, heuristics, set up so that when you face a situation, you can just run along the conditional tree you have built up. And since you don't need to focus on thinking at all, you can put your energy into the execution itself instead of thinking about anything. That's the key here for succeeding, because succeeding actually hides the same quote about a journey starting with a single step. to succeed means to go after what already had occurred. To succeed means to go even further beyond, like one more step. That's what success is. It's another step. But if you're always thinking about which step to take, that's how you end up not moving. Then the solution is simple. Just have rules set ahead of time for you to navigate the situation that you need focus in. If you have those rules set up, you don't need to think, so you can put all of your energy, both physical, or all of the physical, mental, and emotional energy. You have the capacity to invest it then when you have already set up the rules for how to invest it. Kind of like how you can automate your day trading so that you automatically sell when X amount of stock goes below X amount of price, and so on and so forth. If you set up the rules ahead of time, you don't need to actively supervise it. And because you don't need to actively supervise it, it frees you up for other things. So, TLDR, start making rules for yourself, and then when you move, just move in accordance with those rules. But you have to make sure that the rules you chose to establish are based on your own identity and what you choose to believe too. If you're just creating rules based on the values of other people, that's setting yourself up for absolute disaster, because it's going to contradict who you are. And, well, in the best part, or in the best case scenario, it'll contradict who you are. In the worst case scenario, you'll become those rules. You will change who you are, and you probably won't realize it. So, I guess it also all boils down to choice in the end. What you choose to do, choose to believe, choose to create for yourself. Yeah, I guess for me, somehow the conversation topic always returns to choice. But I guess in the end, everything does just boil down to choosing though. Like at some point, saying I chose becomes the fundamental axiom of operating stuff. Like, if you choose something, then it just becomes true. It has a truth value of true, absolute, no changing it. And that's, well, all that you need. Oh, it's almost been an hour already? Dang, I've been yapping for a while. It's been fun though. It's always good to clear out and talk about things like this. Hopefully it's been useful. I'd like to think so. Anytime you can hear the way someone thinks as well as someone's beliefs, it helps you because it gives you an insight into a way of looking at life. It also should jog you into a state of mind where you start considering your own life. Because if you ever hear someone thinking about their own life, you inevitably end up considering your own life too in the process. Well, that, or you just adopt what they say wholesale, but hopefully not. Not that there's anything wrong with taking what I say and just running with it. I'd be honored if you did that. I would just prefer if you actively chose it instead of just allowing someone else to decide for you. Mostly because it's not authentic then, or not real. You see, something is only real if it is part of your life. if it's not like part of your identity or the framework in which you perceive life to be, it's not real for you, right? Like, believing in a higher being is very much real for certain people because it is who they are. That is a bedrock axiom upon the reality that they experience and wish to abide by. So attempting to reject that axiom will be pretty much useless. Instead, you have to consider a way to operate within that axiom framework. But that's the skill of socializing and communication. But you can't really communicate with someone effectively unless you know yourself first. And knowing yourself comes from choices. So unless you have gone out of your way to choose who you are, you really shouldn't be saying, quote unquote, your opinion, since it might not be yours. You might have just heard it somewhere and are repeating it. You might be an echo instead of an original thought, or at least an authentic thought, because nothing is authentic unless it comes from you. And something can come from you only if you have processed it, sat with it, molded over in your mind, and then determined whether or not you believe it's true and representative of the life that you live. Otherwise, it's just words, and words don't have any meaning other than the meaning that you attribute to them. So, that's another thing too. People always forget about the significance of choosing words. What you say often slowly but surely shapes what you see. If you keep saying that dating is messed up, that everyone is out there to cheat on you, that no one believes in loyalty anymore, for example, these are the things that I keep hearing on social media. I utterly and thoroughly reject them, but it keeps popping up again and again. So the fact that it keeps popping up indicates to me that there is at least a small subset of people who are repeating these words, and in that repetition, it slowly becomes a reality. It's not my reality, but it is a reality, a story that exists, and a story that some people buy into. In the act of buying into the story, you give it more credence, and when you have enough credence, slowly it gets perceived as fact, even though it might not be. And in this case, it probably isn't. The problem with just believing everything that you hear over and over again, and by repeating what you hear over and over again, is that it slowly weaves itself into the story of life that you exist in. That weave is difficult to untangle. So if you're not careful about what you say, if you're not careful about what you repeat, you will inevitably start spinning a tale about a life that you probably would not want to live in. Moral of the story being, sit down every now and then just define how you want your life to go. And every time you hear someone try to tell you what life should be, or what life is, or what you should be, or what you are, reject it. Unless it actively matches what you are already believing, reject it entirely. Do not allow anyone to shape what you believe, to shape the facts that exist. Like an example of this is when people say, as a hypothetical, assume there's a social media video that says we of Generation Z are all messed up because of XYZ, right? Or because of not going out, something like that, some random thing. You have to be very much conscious of the fact that they said we. You have to be on the lookout these days for when people are trying to include you in things. I know that it is the baseline to try to be inclusive these days and then try to put people together. But you have to remember that you are not what you choose. You are not what other people say you are in. You are what you choose to be in. Whenever someone says we or all of us or things like that, they're actively trying to put you in a box too when you're listening to it. They are trying to make their listeners in the same group as them. But that's not true. You are not the same as whatever person you are hearing. You do not have their life experiences. You do not have the troubles they have faced. You do not have the struggles they have faced. And the way you walk through life will not be the same. This is particularly true in the race you have. Like, I don't want to bring racism or anything like that, as well as prejudices, into the equation. But the fact of the matter is that you do live a different reality based upon your ethnic origin and or the color of your skin or the way you look. Like, as an Asian American, even though this avatar clearly doesn't show it, the way I experience life is very different from someone who is either Caucasian, white, or whatever like that. Their experiences will highly differ from my experiences. For example, I have always been very struck by how everyone groups Asian Americans as simply Asians. Japanese, Koreans, Chinese, all of us, or I guess I'm not even part of that group, but I'll say us in the metaphysical sense here. All of quote-unquote us are put in the same box, even though historically there is a huge difference. But people don't see that. Instead, they are operating on the cultural, zeitgeist? Gestalt? I don't know what that word is, but the cultural norms that they perceive of Asians and or Asian Americans. There are experiences there that you would not have had if you were white or Caucasian or African American or any other mix like Mexican, Latina, Latino. Too many things to name at the moment. But you have to be aware of that, since people naturally look at similarities when they're trying to relate to you. But you have to be decisive in rejecting certain attributes that they are trying to place on you too. Because what you accept becomes what you are. And that can be dangerous. Oh, looks like Hope's done talking, and it's already an hour. So I'll end it here too. Hopefully that was useful. I'll see you tomorrow.